Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Bealtaine edition of The Wisdom of Cycles from the Celtic Wheel. I am Mary Kennedy, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here again to prepare to those of you who'd like to prepare for Bealtaine, and here with Charlotte, who is, of course, an amazing astrologer. And we come together at each festival, and we just talk about what are the energies, and how can you work with the energies at this profound time on our planet. Yeah, so welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here again.
It's great. You look so solar. I'm kind of
Well, yes, I've got a bit of solar coming in over here.
so what we do is I'm just going to orient us a little bit with the Celtic Wheel, where we are in the Celtic Wheel, and we're at a particularly important point. We're at the second most important festival to the Celts. It is assumed that it was the second after Samhain, and it is Bealtaine. So let me just share my screen. So this is just a way, to just have a look at the wheel and where we are right now, which is Bealtaine here. And as you can see, we're at a really important place on the wheel where we are midway through the wheel. We are moving out of the gammas, the dark half of the year, and moving into the samos, the bright half. So in the Celtic tradition, we work a lot with polarity, with opposites, and the wheel, the year, the cycle is divided in half. The dark feminine half of the year, which started at Samhain, the feminine is all about going into the darkness, going inward, that really retrieving our buried feminine. Really, if you think about nature, that's what's been happening since October, late October, early November of last year, right through into this weekend, is when the fixed day of Bealtaine happens on the 1st of May. The fixed day is when it's usually celebrated in the more folk tradition. And then the astrological date of Bealtaine this year is May the 5th. So we're going to have just a little conversation about what's happening in the sky, what's happening in astrology, um, and then look at the wisdom from the ancestors and the wisdom from astrology. So, Charlotte, is there anything you want to kick off with?
Yeah, well, I think the most appropriate thing to kick off with is just talking about the full moon in Scorpio tomorrow, because it almost feels as if this is like the starting point in many ways.
Hmm.
Um, and even though Bealtaine is on the 1st of May and astrologically the 5th of May, it does feel like this is essentially probably the biggest moon of the year. It's a super moon, which essentially just means super powered. Um, but it's coming at a time when obviously we're in this phase of moving from the dark feminine into the masculine. um, and Scorpio, the moon being in Scorpio is actually a sign of darkness. It's a feminine sign that is about sort of entering the shadow and being it probably is in many ways a very strong representative of feminine energy in its most mystical and its most uh, fertile in a way, because it's about transmutation. And then the opposing sun, of course, because a full moon is when the sun opposes the moon and basically highlights it by shining its light on it. The sun, the masculine, is in the sign of Taurus, which is about stability and physicality and simplicity. It's about sensuality. It's about the five senses. So we're looking at the inner and the outer, and the mysterious and the simple, So that wonderful opposition that's kicking off tomorrow, which feels very relevant to us going into a time where we're asking that sun to come in and maybe, take the baton from that mysterious, mystical, feminine cauldron and go, all right, what do we do with this now? What's the journey for the next couple of weeks? And the kind of image I had when we were talking about this just before we started was as the masculine comes back in, we don't want to throw him straight into battle. It's a celebration, it's a party in some senses. And because Taurus is about touch, taste, smell, um what we see, what we hear, it's like looking around and just appreciating the presence. of that masculine, having, having done the work to have that glorious magical feminine underneath. It's like, now we go, all right, so here we are, the masculine is here, let's just enjoy it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think that's really like that resonates on so many different levels with the Celtic and the wisdom I've learned from the Celtic wheel around this time. Like one of the things you say there, like it's just so sensual, and it is like this was a celebration of Eros and of fertility at this time, and also what you say about let's not like have the masculine, the sun move into action. Well, look at the sun, like the sun still isn't at his highest strength.
Mm,
He's still like he's warm, he's got much warmer, he's strengthening, he's got much higher in the sky, but he's still not at his burning height. And that's what is celebrated at this time, is that more softer masculine, the softer solar masculine. And what does that mean for us is like that yes, we're always, our world, or this great paradigm of progress and this contemporary world just celebrates this high achieving, always the bigger, brighter, better. I'm always saying that. But it's that like really harsh solar masculine that has created like a wasteland, has created so much burnout in us. So this is beautiful to practice this at this time, is knowing that actually, yes, it's a celebration. So the feminine always accompanies the masculine when we work in the healthy way of this. So the feminine is the part that knows when to rest, that knows how to be compassionate. So when you're pushing yourself forward in action, that actually you have the softness as well as the strength.
mm,
And I think that's a big piece that I've learned. So, and then the celebration is the marriage in
mhm,
the Celtic tradition. It's the Banrahariha, which is the marriage of the king. The king in the Celtic tradition married the land goddess.
mhm.
So it's the sovereignty, and it's like we they join together and they move into the second half of the year, the bright half, just as the masculine is underneath the feminine in the dark half of the year.
Yeah, yeah. And the beauty of that actually is because Taurus, where the sun is, and where it's for Bealtaine, because it's 15 degrees of Taurus when we get to Bealtaine astrologically. Taurus is a feminine sign and the land goddess. So, that's presumably where all of this ties in. But it is this thing of picking up the feminine and sort of moving forward, as opposed to going, you get out the way and now I'm going to get on with my thing, which is pretty much why we've ended up in the paradigm we have. So it's that embodying, Taurus is all about embodiment and nature, earth. It's the first earth sign. It's also what's known as a fixed sign in the zodiac. We have three modalities: cardinal, which is initiating; fixed, which is stabilizing; and then mutable, which is moving between.
Mm.
And Taurus is fixed, so it's not about charging forward, even though you might think, oh, the bull, we go. It's not that at all. It's actually about standing still and going, right, what have we learned, what have we established? Let's bathe in that for a while, let's enjoy it. And it's also, going back to the moon. Tomorrow we're on the sexuality axis of Scorpio and Taurus. They're very different sides of sexuality in those two signs. So eros, enjoying the body, indulging in the senses, indulging in sensuality and sexuality. So I just sort of feel festival, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, and it was, in the folk traditions that came down, that we can certainly start to think about, or to start to kind of pull out, well, how did the Celtic ancestors celebrate this? But right through into the folk um, rituals, there were rituals of fertility. There was like all night festivity on the eve of Bealtaine, and then of course the big fire on as Bealtaine, the dawn of Bealtaine. So it's that sense of everything is awake and alive and thriving, and or not thriving but throbbing and pulsing and swollen with like potential. And that's that's so Taurus, as for little as I know. But it's the body, it's like, yeah, it's so amazing. And you were saying also the simplicity, which I think is big piece. You had said that earlier. I don't know if
Mhm.
you speak to that, but I think
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
I think it's important because we were just talking about how, with the current restrictions that we're in, because the planet Saturn is still very much in the mix and actually in tension with this full moon tomorrow, which basically means whatever, if you try and run, you'll just run into a wall, because Saturn puts obstacles in the way to get you to slow down and think more carefully and methodically about what you're creating. So this could actually be, in this couple of weeks, if you do try and charge forward with anything too emphatically, you might find that someone sticks something in the spokes, and trips you up. So
I
we've
love
got that element, going over the handlebars. But the simplicity of, we're obviously in lockdown restriction again, very Saturnian, and just, you don't need to go very far to find the things that you desire or you wish for. I mean, go outside and sit in the grass, walk barefoot, go and put your hands in the nearest river or lake, go and sit with a flower and just stare into it for a good 20 minutes and notice every single detail. I do recommend actually sort of picking wild flowers at this time of year and putting them in your bath. And just bathing in them. I mean, you can do something, we talked about this before, it's called a flower Olympia, which is a shamanic ritual, which actually is going outside onto the grass and putting flowers into the water, and it's tepid water, so you have to tip it over your head, and you bathe yourself in the energy of the flowers. If you're brave enough to do that, go for it. But if you'd rather just take it a bit more gently and have a nice hot bath with flowers in.
Yeah, or there, in the Celtic tradition, you on May morning, on Bealtaine morning, you go out at dawn and you wash yourself in the dew of the that has just been infused with the first rays of the rising sun. So it's got the beautiful feminine masculine in it, the water, fire, and then you pick wild flowers. And even when I was a little girl in the west of Ireland in the 80s, or probably the 70s actually. We used to, myself and my sister used to go around and put the flowers on the neighbors' steps of their doorsteps, because again, the tradition was it was a time when the veil was thin, and they felt on between sundown on the eve and daybreak or sunrise on Lo Fela Bealtaine, that the that the veil was thin and the forces of the other world, the fairies and the Cailleach, would come and steal your children and steal your butter and milk. And this was put down as protective. There was a lot of around protection. So those are other things you can do with the flowers, or just offer them to your neighbors, which would be lovely to do in lockdown, but also to yourself. And I love that idea of having a bath um, with some petals and flowers in it. But equally, I think, it's time for us to get a bit more wild and get out on the grass and pour water with flowers in it over us. I think that would do a
Absolutely.
lot of good in lockdown.
Yeah, and another thing just to point out on the astrology level is, at the moment we've got the planet Uranus in Taurus, who's creating a lot of this tension with Saturn, because Saturn is rules, law, kind of obligations, going by the book, and Uranus is no way. Uranus is rebellion, it's Prometheus, it's I'm not doing anything according to anyone else's rules and I want freedom. And that is the flavor of this year. It's disruptive because we've got these two forces fighting against each other somewhat. But with Uranus in Taurus, where he's creating disruption in the earth realm, in the physical realm, and the sun is going to be very close to Uranus in Taurus for the next couple of weeks, so shining on that reality somewhat. And with everything, I certainly sense, and I'm sure a lot of people do, you may even, Murray, that there are big earth changes coming, in terms of the rumbling of the rumbling of change coming, because the earth needs to adjust to what has happened. But that also applies to our physical bodies. Our bodies are made of the earth. We are natural beings. And so really taking time to honor your physical experience in this world, whether it's the things you have around you or the things you put into your body, but taking time, I think, particularly now, to really appreciate the experience of being physical. And I do think things like picking wildflowers, smelling wildflowers, you know, again, walking barefoot in the earth, such tiny, simple ways to remind you what a magical experience it is to be of the earth, are also going to be really helpful. Not only is it grounding in
Mhm.
what is a very shaky time for us all, but it just reminds you that there's magic everywhere. We've just forgotten how to see it.
You know, we have, and you know, one of the great sacred trees that were used, or leaves from the sacred tree that were used at this time in the Celtic tradition, is the rowan tree. And I was, you know, 2 days ago, I was like going, I wish I was in the middle of the country to really feel Bealtaine, like to really get into it. And then I went out for a walk, and I just couldn't get over, like about I don't know, maybe meters down the road, I was looking and I was like, this is a rowan tree on one of the trees on my road. And then, you know, just all the cherry blossoms and people's gardens just wild and opening. It's there in front of us. You know, I think that's one of the big pieces of this time, is that we have to, or what would really help us is to learn to just actually know that we have everything that we need. I think that's one of the big pieces I'm taking out of lockdown and this time. It's like, simplify. You just open your eyes, you know, that other, you know, new way of looking at the world is actually going to show you that. I mean, of course, people are in a lot of pain, but also, even in pain, that there's a way of looking at the world that you can see that you have what you need right at this time.
Yeah, and something to add to that, because you know we have got Scorpio in the mix tomorrow, so you know might have to go a little bit into the darkness with some of this too, because the darkness hasn't gone. It's just sort of it's just underneath a little bit. But the planet Pluto is going into what's called a retrograde on Wednesday, which is where the planet appears to go backwards. But essentially, all it means is it's a revision period of the themes of that planet, because the planet's already gone forwards and then it walks back over its ground and then it goes forward again. So it's like a revision, a checking, a reorganization. And Pluto is the soul, it's the collective soul. So, you know, wherever we've been traveling since the beginning of this year, we are about to kind of go back over that ground and just, you know, see what we've missed and cover a bit of ground there. And so there's an opportunity for some, I have to say, you know, as tragic and as devastating as the world events have been and continue to be, there's nothing that wakes us up like death,
Mm.
because it forces us to just be in the moment of life and recognize how absolutely precious it is. So if we can use this time to also, again, it comes back to the simplicity, the very fact of being alive and conscious and in this experience right now, the more we can attune to that, the more we're going to get out of this period.
Yeah, and I love that, because again, that's bringing that's an honoring at the end of the first half of the cycle. Is a very feminine practice to do, like to pause, to take stock, to look back and say, since last end of October, beginning of November, what what are you taking with you? What have you learned? How has it reshaped you? And you know, I know it has absolutely reshaped me. And as you say, death and darkness, that's what it does. It just, we get to really see what we need to shed. And in the darkness, we shed, and then we come out into the light of the second half of the year. So I love that, Charlotte. It's a practice I've been doing this week. It's really just looking back and honoring the feminine half of the year and seeing, what am I taking with me, and were my learnings,
Yeah.
and how have I been reshaped by this?
And I think another beauty is that as we move forward, because obviously what's happening is we're getting this resurgence of feminine balance in the world,
Mm.
which is unfamiliar because we didn't come into a world that looked like that or felt like that. You know, we're in very uncertain times because we're going into something we haven't in this life felt before. And so there's this, you know, more continuous recognition of the darkness that's following us everywhere right now, to just go, look, this doesn't get put away and then we go back to being masculine. You know, it's like, no, 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 she's here the whole time. And actually, the more you allow that and embody it and bring it into the reality, you don't have to be in it all the time, but just knowing that she's there creating the magic, I think is something that we're all getting more accustomed to, albeit through quite a rocky ride, because that's where change comes from. But it's very exciting as well to know that we're experiencing something that hasn't been experienced before.
Yeah, yeah, and we're all at that frontier. So that's it's lovely to hear you point that out, because I think that's as I would see it, it's that really that understanding that, in the Celtic wheel, the the summer solstice is the moment that the darkness is born, is, we start the journey back into the dark, into the winter solstice. So
Yeah.
it's, and that may sound like, oh God, can we not, like, is there not a chance that we can just be in the bright for longer? But actually, when you start to live from this way where the feminine is underneath the masculine, masculine is under the feminine, they're in a dance together, just like the darkness and light, just like the summer and winter, the seasons. It's a much more, it's a gentler way of living in the world, actually. And it's a magical, I find it really magical. And because we're not in that over efforting, and the masculine, the solar masculine, if we go into this all hell, in our lives, as I did in my own life in my 30s, I got burnt out, just like, the crops get burnt if there isn't rain. And the feminine is represented by the water in the Celtic tradition, and fire, the masculine. So if there isn't rain, we end up having a drought. We get burnt out, we don't have what we need to last us through the winter. So this is where this dance, this marriage, and this marriage of the goddess of the sovereignty, she hands the sovereignty to the king, in the marriage, and she bestows it on him. And I just, that has been, a life game changer for me in my life.
Mm, mm, yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot. There's loads there. I don't want to, like, give too, give overdo it, over masculine it.
Yeah,
um,
well, I mean, I could talk endlessly, but I'm aware that I do sometimes talk endlessly, so I'll keep it to snippets that are relevant, rather than going on and on and on.
Yeah, is there anything, I think it'd be good maybe just to do, like, the two or three things that, we've mentioned, a couple of little rituals we can do, and then a couple of things to keep in mind or to maybe reflect on.
Yeah, well, something I haven't mentioned actually, the relationship with water, you mentioned
Mm.
about washing in the dew, and I do think that water is a very relevant theme to what is happening in the world. My recent learning around water is how it carries memory, and how actually all the bodies of water on this planet carry the memories of everything that's happened. And so there's a huge purification of water happening at the moment, and that's not necessarily being shown much in the physical at the moment. It's probably a more higher sort of consciousness thing. It's like we consciously do it, we do it in another space, and then we bring it into the physical. So I don't think we'll see the water purification for some time. But the planet Jupiter is going into Pisces on the 14th of May, and Jupiter is very happy in Pisces. He used to actually be the traditional ruler of that sign, and Pisces is water, and it's also the unconscious and the ocean of consciousness, sorry. So I think this will be quite an exalted time where Jupiter is kind of, it feels to me like a cleansing. At the same time, we've got Mars currently in Cancer. Mars isn't so happy in Cancer. Cancer is very emotional, very psychic, very intuitive, and Mars is like a masculine warrior. So when he gets into that energy, he's a bit discombobulated. It's like trying to run through water, basically. So just be mindful that your emotions might be a bit changeable, and that's okay. And that, that there can be, Mars in Cancer is a bit tantrumy. It's throwing yourself on the floor and going, wow, but then being over it in 10 minutes and onto something else. So that's also in the mix. But I do think that a relationship with water for all of us is really, really key right now. So I would encourage anyone to find your nearest body of water and go and consider yourself the guardian of that body of water. It's chosen you and you've chosen it. And you can go and collect some. You could put it on your altar. If it's clean, you could bathe in it. If it's a nice lake or a river, by all means get in it, but honor the water. Consider yourself and your relationship with it, part of the purification, is you're imbuing it with memories of love as opposed to whatever else we've been experiencing here. So that would be a great thing to do, I think, in these next couple of weeks.
Gorgeous. Yeah, yeah, I love that. Imbuing it with love. And we are bodies of water too, you
Yes,
know.
exactly. We are pretty
Yeah.
much all water too. So that's exactly it, purifying ourselves as well.
Yeah, and bodies of water in the Celtic tradition were sacred and feminine and healing, very healing. So
Yeah.
it's like that lovely relationship between us and water. So yeah, I think maybe a little recap. If you on Bealtaine, it's a lovely thing to pick some flowers on the if you can do it on at dawn, that's when they're really potent. They've just received the sun's energy. Wash your face in the dew, or go to a body of water and wash yourself there. Just even wash your hands and your face, and you wash away the winter. The way I work with it is I'm washing away everything that's standing in my way of my full blossoming. So it's they in the Celtic tradition they washed away, or they were it was a protection from the she and the Cailleach and all the other world forces. But for me, the way I work with it is that. And another thing is a lovely thing is to just put some flowers at your neighbors on your neighbor's step, and as you do, offer them a blessing of abundance and protection in this time on the planet. Um, and then, yeah, just to remember, you have everything that you really need. It's just about opening new eyes with new perspective. Um, yeah. Is there anything else that we?
No, I mean, I think we've given everyone quite a lot to go away with there. And just to say, my own experience of leaving the flowers outside people's doors, I was locked down in Peru last year when I was doing the Celtic Wheel. And I actually, I was like, I'm not sure if I want to put dew on my face because I might pick up a bullet ant in the process. And, but I did. But I actually went and picked flowers and put them outside people's doors. And the reactions were so beautiful. It took quite a while for people to work out it was me. And I didn't say anything, but there was a glow because we were all in quite a stressful situation. We were locked down in a hotel together. And I just remember seeing that real appreciation. It really touched people and it really gave them something. So I do really, encourage doing that on Bealtaine.
Yeah, I have a kind of idea that we could do it all over the world. It would be amazing. Um, or the Northern Hemisphere anyway at Bealtaine. Yeah. And then the final thing is just maybe take a bit of time to just look back in the last 6 months at the first half of the year, the dark half. We've been in, certainly in Ireland, we've been in this really severe lockdown. So we've really been in the dark and in confinement. So what are you taking from that? What are your great takeaways, and how are you going to weave that into your life as you move forward? So yeah, thank you, Charlotte,
Absolutely.
for great.
Again.
So lovely. I love how wisdom these wisdoms can just really reflect each other. It's really magic. And we will see you. The two of us will be back for the summer solstice in 7 weeks. Yeah. So in the meantime, Belton of blessings to everybody. Lots of love. See you next time.
Love.